And good afternoon to everyone who's joining us. My name is Robin Lawrence, and welcome to our next series in our Women on Board Leadership Academy. Today, we will be talking about advocacy and ambassadorship, and we have invited some great ladies to be a part of our panel. Before I give an introduction, we just want to remind everyone that we are recording. So for anyone who may have to dip out a little early, or maybe there's someone who couldn't make it and you knew they wanted to be here, we can provide that information at the conclusion of today's workshop. Before we begin, I'm going to just ask each of you ladies a quick question. And Takita, we want to know to everyone present, what does advocacy mean to you? So this is an interactive poll. You can join us at slido.com. There is the code 61144, or you can use the QR code that's on the left side of your screen, and that will take you straight to the slide and you can provide your answer. We'll give everyone maybe 60 seconds to respond. What does advocacy mean to you? And we do encourage everyone to participate because we want to hear from you. That's why you're here today. Oh, beautiful. I like that. Change, opportunity to educate. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Empower, educate. Yes. We've got equality, possibility, social change. Yes. Being the voice for others. Yes, absolutely. Diversity, collaboration. Absolutely. We're going to talk about coalitions a little later, but those are some great definitions. Let's see, we've got being the voice for other, inclusion. Yes, our last series, we talked about diversity, belonging, being inclusive. We have representation, absolutely. We'll give it maybe another 10 seconds before we move forward. Do we have any other change words here? Someone said empower, inclusivity, a seat at the table. Standing in the gap for, or maybe standing in the gap for others or another. Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for participating. And I'm going to ask you one more question. What do you hope to learn today about advocacy? So we're going to put up another poll. And again, you can use the QR code in the upper left-hand corner, or you can join at slido.com. The code is 61144. And we'll give it a few before some of our responses start to funnel in, and we can share what you ladies are hoping to learn from today's session about advocacy. Okay, how to be an effective change maker and how to properly advocate. We also have how to get more involved in local advocacy. And that's important because advocacy, people think of advocacy, they only, may think of people at the state level or federal, but local, be it a local nonprofit, or maybe it's your community group or whatever the case is. How to communicate efficiently and effectively. Tips to scaling advocacy efforts. I like that. How to lead effectively as a woman. Someone said they want to have an impact, they want to be an impactful advocate to craft effective messaging. We're going to address a lot of this today as well. We'll give it maybe another 15 seconds for any of you ladies who may want to chime in that has not already done so. Beautiful. How to work with elected officials. Prerequisites for board activity. Someone said, I want to connect locally to expand our mission. I think these are all important as you join both the government board or a nonprofit board. All right. Strength. They're hoping to just maybe get some tips on being strong, maybe a stronger advocate. All right. All right, we'll go ahead and move forward. Takita, thank you so much for your help. All right, ladies, as I promised, today's session is about, being an advocate and also an ambassador. And I want to go ahead and take some time to introduce today's speakers. And just to remind you, we are recording, ladies. If you have questions, you can drop them in the chat box And each of our speakers today are going to give you a brief, roughly 15-minute presentation or less to kind of talk about advocacy and ambassadorship from their professional, volunteer, and vantage point. So first of all, I would like to introduce you to Ms. Nakasha Wells. Nakasha Wells is currently the Senior Manager of Governmental Affairs for PalmTran. For those who don't know, PalmTran is one of our county agencies that provides public transportation to those who may need to use it here in Palm Beach County. Nakasha Wells is a seasoned political with over 20 years of experience in campaign strategy and outreach. She holds a bachelor's degree from Florida State University and also a Juris Doctorate from St. Thomas University. In addition to being both a lawyer and a governmental relations expert, her most important role is being a mother. She most recently served as the Florida Coalition's director for the Joe Biden campaign for president, and she counts this victory as one of her greatest career accomplishments. Ladies, I would like to introduce to you again Ms. Nakasha Wells. And Nakasha, take it away.
Well, hello, ladies. And Robin, thank you for that amazing introduction. It's almost like I wrote it. But it's so great to be with you this afternoon. And it's also just fantastic to see so many familiar faces and so many new ones. And I'm just grateful to be asked to share with you just a little bit about board service, in particular with respect to my area of expertise, which is transportation, and ways that you can get involved with PalmTran Service Board here in Palm Beach County. You know, all of you are dynamic women and you recognize, how many opportunities there are for us to be able to serve. But I think a lot of times, we're just not aware of all of the opportunities that are available to us. And PalmTran Service Board is one such, opportunity to serve that I wasn't aware of prior to my tenure here with PalmTran. So I wanted to share a little bit about, what we do here and how you can get involved. Our mission here is to provide access to opportunity for everyone safely, efficiently, and courteously. My boss would be so proud that I've memorized that. But it's so true because with transportation, it's access. All of us have cars and all of us live in a very southern and suburban part of the country. So we don't have the same vision when it comes to transportation. Unfortunately, in our community, sometimes, individuals who utilize public transportation are kind of seen as, the underbelly of society, sometimes. And what my aim and our aim here at PalmTran is to kind of change that perspective. One, we want to make transportation more accessible for everyone, even folks who are not public transportation dependent. We want to make it easier for you to, go down to Miami and take advantage of, some of the opportunities there. And we want people to think about public transportation, as a viable option. So we have the PalmTran Service Board, which was created by the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners. And the purpose of the board is to make certain that all of the goals and the requirements, if you will, that we are mandated under from the federal government. PalmTran, like just about every other transit agency throughout the entire United States, receives a tremendous amount of federal funding. So obviously with those federal dollars come federal requirements. And so part of PalmTran Service Board's requirement is to make certain that we're meeting those benchmarks. But I wanted you to know who the folks are that serve on this board. Now, of course, I have to add this caveat that, life as we know it has completely changed. One, we're in this completely virtual environment, and I wish I could be in front of you and, hug and, squeeze you. But because of the changes, that have come as a result of COVID-19, our PalmTran Service Board actually has somewhat been disbanded because one, we have senior members on our board. We've got individuals, who have pre-existing conditions, and, safety is our number one concern, point blank and period, in everything that we do. So our board has not been meeting since last summer, but we expect that we will be meeting again very soon. So I wanted you all to know what those seats are. and what we're looking for as far as service on the Palm Trans Service Board. So it's a 13-member board, and each seat is specific. So seat 1 is a representative with transportation experience, like either in a professional capacity or previous board experience. Seat number 2 is a disability advocate. So just to tell you a little bit about Palm Tran Connection, which is the other side of our house, you guys all see the long buses, going throughout the city, but the smaller buses are for 2 different groups of people. One, they're for transit dependent individuals who meet certain financial qualifications, and the other group of individuals are those with a disability. As I stated earlier, we receive a tremendous amount of federal funding, and with that funding, we have to make certain that we're meeting all ADA guidelines with respect to providing transportation and making certain that it's accessible in our community for everyone. So that seat number 2 is a disability advocate, and it really can be anyone. I think we all share the same concern for our disabled, community members, and making certain that, they can live full lives. So that seat number 2 is specifically for disability advocates. Seat 3 is an environmental advocate. Obviously, our fleet has 165 buses on the fixed route side, and then we have almost 200 vehicles on the Palm Tran Connection side. That's a lot of emissions going out into, our environment. And we know, no matter how you feel about, climate change and, those things, we know, listen, it's February and it's still cold in Florida. So we know that there's some different things happening, with our environment. So that particular seat is for an environmental advocate. One of the things we're doing, just from an environmental perspective, is we have a long range plan actually to shift our vehicles over to 100% electric. I'm very excited about that possibility, but obviously, with almost 400 vehicles, that transition is going to take some time. So that person is responsible for environmental advocacy. And so I'll run through these really quickly. I don't want to belabor the point, but seat 5 is our business community representative. Seat 6 is an individual with multicultural experience. Obviously we want to make certain that all aspects of our community are fully represented on our board. Seat 7 is a senior citizen representative. Seat 8 is a certified paratransit user. So this individual actually has to be someone that uses Palm Tran Connection. And we think that this particular seat is invaluable, because who can provide us with more insight into what using our service is actually like, other than someone who actually uses it almost on a daily basis. So that seat is reserved for someone who actually uses Connection. Seat 10 is a fixed route bus operator. So again, these are, this is an individual who actually is employed with Palm Tran currently as a bus operator. They provide us completely invaluable, information about what it's like being out there on the front lines. And they are heroes. I just have to give them a shout out. I'm sorry, because they have been serving nonstop since, COVID started. And that they're putting their lives at risk to provide this valuable service to the community. So we have a representative on our board from our actual ranks. And then seat 11 is just a citizen at large. And I like that seat because that's someone that's sitting here today that could serve in that capacity. You don't have to fit into, some of these other more rigid, requirements. This is just someone who's interested in advocating for equal transit opportunities here in Palm Beach County. Seat 12 is someone with extensive paratransit experience. And finally, seat 13 is one of my favorite seats. It's actually a resident of the Glades area. Obviously, our county is so unique. It's one of the largest land, counties, I think east of the Mississippi. It's huge. And so providing transportation here in Palm Beach County presents some real challenges to make certain that it's equal for everyone. And one of the things that we've done out in the Glades that actually came as a result of some of the feedback we got from Palm Trans Service Board is we have kind of a small commuter connector service out in the Glades called Go Glades. We actually let a resident in the Glades even name the service because we want folks to feel invested in what we do here. And so this individual has to be a resident in the Glades, because we think that, again, this individual will give us insight into providing transportation in that community that we wouldn't be able to get from someone who doesn't, live there. So I hope I've given you a little bit of insight into, what we do here at Palm Trans. We provide over 9 million boardings a year. We provide the most transportation, public transportation options, even more than Tri-Rail here in Palm Beach County. So this is a very valuable service to the community. And, we want to just make sure we're providing it in a fully accessible way. So I hope I've given you a little bit of insight.
Thanks, Nakasha. So what I'm hearing from you is that even though we have Palm Trans that people may have an idea of a particular service, they're here to serve the entire community, but at the same time, they're also allowing for the community to kind of, to a degree, influence or at least allow them to be heard so that they can advocate for themselves, be it a user, a disabled individual, it could be a mother, whoever, but they do utilize citizens from varying backgrounds and qualifications to help them to improve services. And I think you hit on a good point, using the example of the Glades, that, people are talking about these are the challenges we have. And Palm Trans is essentially standing in the gap. So when you talk about advocacy, do members of this service board get a chance to approach our county commissioners to give input? Like, how much influence do they really have? And I'm assuming they're more like just as an advisory, they're not regulatory, so they may just speak up, but like, what does that mean to our commissioners? And can you talk a little bit about that process?
Absolutely. So, in my experience, our board members, as well as the users of our service, are very vocal. They're not, church mice. They speak out, about issues with, the provision of our services. And you hit the nail on the head. This is an advisory board. The one thing that we actually have to, based on federal guidelines, that we have to take before our service board for an actual vote and approval is service changes. So anytime we make any substantial changes, and of course the federal government defines what those changes look like, but the service board actually has to vote on them before it goes to the Board of County Commissioners. But there have been a number of issues. I'll give you an example, and I know this is something that all of you can relate to. One of the things that we are continuously working on is providing bus shelters. I know you feel the same way I do when you ride past someone and it's pouring raining and they're standing waiting on the bus and they just happen to be at a bus stop that does not have a shelter. We have over 3,000 bus stops here in Palm Beach County, and the shelters are very expensive. And so that's one of the things that, the service board weighs in on frequently, is providing bus shelters at every single stop in the county. We're making strides. We're not there yet. Obviously, everything takes money. And with COVID-19, the financial shortfalls for, all across the board, private sector as well as government, have been tremendous. But we're still striving, to make some of those changes. So those are some of the things that our service board actually weighs in on, because those are things that they see every day. And, it just breaks my heart when I see children and seniors standing at bus stops, even the heat, just not having, protection from the sun. So that's an example of one of the items that they advocate for.
And then Nakasha, does the service board have any current openings, or if someone is interested in serving, how might they learn about those opportunities? We did have someone in the comments who's interested.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I will leave my contact information in the chat as well. You can reach out to me. I actually take the recommendations to our executive director for his review, and then the Board of County Commissioners actually approves them. We don't currently have any vacancies on the board, but there will be. And so I would love to connect to someone who's interested in serving.
Thank you so much, Nakasha. And for those who are listening, just keep an eye on the chat box. And if possible, we may be able to maybe include her information via email at the conclusion of today's workshop. So thank you again, Nakasha, for talking about the importance of engaging our community and using their voices to kind of help advocate for those service changes with Palm Trans.
Thank you so much, Robin.
You're welcome. All right, our next panelist for today is Ms. Karen Wilkerson. She's going to speak to building relationships with our elected officials, their staff, and it's all about the communication and having an effective presentation. So to tell you just a little bit about Karen, Karen Wilkerson has served as the executive director of the State Retail Association. She's also been the head of her own lobbying firm, where she has represented both national and state companies. Karen's work has included designing services for the retail community, analyzing legislation and regulations, and also serving as a spokesperson for the industry. She's also testified before both congressional and state government legislatures. Karen has served on numerous national committees, including the Small Business Administration Advisory Committees, the advisory groups of U.S. senators and members of the House of Representatives, and also a study of unemployment laws and the governor's reform, committee, I can't talk right, sorry, the governor's committee to reform tort laws. She has also served as the chair and executive director of the Vermont Commission on the Status of Women and was involved in the landmark decision to permit girls to participate in the Little League. Karen has also served as a president of 2 of the local League of Women Voter Groups, has served on 2 state board of the League, and is currently serving on the League of Women Voters Florida board. So without further ado, I introduce to you all Karen Wilkerson.
Thank you. So what I want to talk about today is the needed skills, the practice, and the influence. We really don't have enough time to practice. So I have arranged, and I will put this contact information in the chat when I'm done, that I'm doing an hour-and-a-half presentation, hands-on, interactive, on the skills building. And you are allowed to come at no charge to the League meeting, which is Thursday, February 11th, 3:30 to 5, and it will be a Zoom. So, and it will be recorded, but it's hands-on, so you really feel. So what I want to cover briefly today is how you create the relationship, analyzing personality styles, copying body language, and linguistic patterning, neuro-linguistic patterning. So next slide. First of all, before you ever get to whoever it is you're going to be lobbying, you need to do research. In this day and age, it's a lot easier. You can get on Google and find a lot out. You can go to directories, you can ask around, but figure out who you are seeing. And you may even want a preliminary visit for the first time if you don't know the person. Not where you're discussing an issue, but simply presenting the organization that you're interested in and the parameters of your issues. I always advise getting there 15 minutes early for your first visit, because meeting the staff is just as important as meeting the dignitary. So you can introduce yourself to the staff, get their cards, ask them what particular focus issues they work on. Who is the scheduler? Very important to know for the future when times are tight. Find out appointments for the legislature, what committees they are on, and some of their past history if they've held other positions. Next. So things you can do to let them know about your organization. I want to backtrack for just a minute. When you're in that office 15 minutes early, you can learn a lot, even if you don't know the person you're going to be meeting with. Find out what the pictures are on the wall. Is this a soccer mom that you're going to be meeting with? Oh, my kids play soccer too. I know what it is when they play in the mud and you have to have them enter the house in the laundry room, strip them because they're so dirty. Oh, you've got an award from such and such. Take all of that in and put that in, your file, your memory file. You could invite them. In our case, we would invite them to come to a league meeting, something that we know would appeal to them, and extend that invitation to their staff members or their family members. They may have a very active spouse or partner who's interested in one of your issues. So it's a win-win for everybody. Offer them the possibility of a guest article in your newsletter on a particular issue that you know is of interest to your group. Offer them league membership. Some organizations even give a free membership to some elected officials. At the league, we don't do that, but we do offer them to please become a member. And usually Once they're asked, they say yes. So don't be afraid to ask. One of the things I firmly have learned over the many years is the best public servants are the ones who have advisory committees. You just heard about Palmtree. If you don't, if you're addressing a politician who does not have an advisory committee, that's a great introduction. We would have somebody from the business community, someone from the needy populations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, in my case, we would also like to have a lead representative on there. That's great. It builds coalitions with other groups, and it sets up also a frame for the politician to bounce ideas off of, because it's informal, the press is not there, and people can speak pretty freely. And of course, the ultimate connection with a politician is to work on their campaign. Now, if you work for a group that does not, that has a prohibition from lobbying, you need to find people that are not on your board, etc. who have that ability. Next. Number one, when you meet with that person, you need to decide which of the 4 personalities that they represent, because that's their atmosphere and you want to be in their atmosphere. A lot of those elected people are going to be the leaders, creators. Or maybe they got a social director. When I was working for a company, I always said, that's the person I want to, for the holiday parties. But somebody who goes out, maybe it's an aide if it's not the politician themselves. Find out if they are detailed oriented, very different than the leader, because the person who is detailed wants the 8 pages of statistical information. The leader usually doesn't want that. They want 1 page with 3 bullets on it. So you have to adapt to the type of person you're dealing with. The analyst thinker, they want to know why you chose this recommendation versus something else. They want to know what the options were and why you thought this was the way to go. Next. Body language. This is the easiest way to get comfortable with somebody you don't know. You just observe them. Do they sit up straight? Put their hands on their desk? Join them. That's how they like to be contacted. If they're a sloucher, well, slouch a little bit. It doesn't have to be a complete copy. You need to change. You need to look at their body language and get comfortable with their body language. If you don't know your own body language, look in the mirror for like 10 minutes and watch what you do with your body. You'll know you're successful with the body language when you've matched that person and you move and they follow you. You have their attention. Next. Next slide. There we are. Probably the most powerful thing you can do is read books on neurolinguistic patterning. This is essential if you're going to be in the communications field. It was originally developed to deal with children who had problems expressing themselves, etc. And what we learned was all of us have a personal preference of the verbs and words that we like to use. For instance, someone who says to you, and this is where you have to do the analyzing, I see what you mean. When I look at that, I know right or wrong. Those are visual learners, they're the majority of people. Okay? The next is the auditory. I hear what you're saying, Karen. That's an auditory. So you don't want to use visual verbs with that person. Then there's the feeling. There's always the classic Clinton, I feel your pain. I see that you're passionate. All those type of words let you know. And then you have the neutral person. They kind of use the being words. It is what it is. I'll know it. I'll know it when I read it. I'll know it. I'll have to check around with everybody. Okay. I actually have a long list of the 3 categories of those words that we use very commonly. And that's one of the things when we have more time that we really work. We test them out with each other and analyze each other. And then we also try to match them to another person. Okay? Those, if you want to invest your time, you get a great payback. That's what you want to learn. I used to practice on my kids when I took classes. And at that time, I had two teenagers out of three kids. I want you to know when you can impact a teenager with this language, you know it's successful, okay? Because they are a tough audience. Next. So the three things you need to do to be successful in just the skills of communicating. The body language, is it formal? Is it casual? And in different places, it may change. The guy in the three-piece suit who's rigid in his office, when you meet with him on some other circumstances, may, have his golf shirt on and be very casual. So you need to adapt. Personality types. Is it the leader? Is it the guy with the power push? And those people have egos and you better feed it. Or the social person who can go out and sell it to the public. The detailed person, the engineer who wants, the 8 pages of statistics. And then the analyst who wants the comparison of this versus alternatives. And look at that verbiage. And really, this is where you want to put your time. Are they visual, auditory? Is it their feelings or is it neutral? Those are their preferred ways to communicate. You need to match those. If you are a visual person, and I'm just talking about how I feel about the issue, it is not going to have the impact that it will have when I can match your verbiage. Then we're on the same train going in the same direction. Next. So the second part, we all have to have the handouts and the framing. So next. In outline versus detail. I told you about, some people, that leader wants something with 3 bullets. 5 is the maximum bullets he's going to take in. Okay. So 1 or 2 to 3 is about it. You want to make sure that the handout material is easy for them to file and find again. So when they say, oh yeah, Karen was in there, what do we do with that? So whatever you hand out, you also want to resend to the aide that deals with that issue. So there's a double contact there. I think it's great to have that personal contact and then have it followed up with your members or other members of your company or board that reinforce what you're doing. And whether they're an 8-page reader or a 3-bullet reader, try to think of a memorable phrase or lingo that they can use. They will remember it, they will use it, and you can use it, and it kind of creates this network of words. And distinctive look. You may want to put it on colored paper or with a colored border, but you want it to be distinctive. If you are new to this person, you may want to invest in business cards with your picture on it so they remember. Or perhaps with the League of Women Voters, we have a very nice magnetic name tag that we put on. So it says my name and then why I'm there for the League of Women Voters. So the whole time they're looking at me, that's being reinforced. And if you're a visual learner, that's really important. Next. Here's an example of a great handout. The issue is in big, bold type, so it stands up there in the file and is easy to find. Versus having to turn your head on the side for an 8.5 by 11 letterhead format. And in the upper right-hand corner in a box is the contact information. It would be my name, my phone, my email. So they don't have to look far for the information. Then just a short statement on the issue. If it's a bill number, you need to put that in there. And if there's an accompanying bill number, like they use in Florida, where you have to have separate bills, but they can be duplicates, you need to put both of those in. There's that 3 to 5 bullet point. This is like the quick study. They're on their way to the floor or committee for a vote, and this is the quick study. And then that summary statement that can include your gimmick wording. I started out in advertising, something memorable that lets them repeat that verbiage very easily. Next. So in framing the issue, don't be a nag, be positive. Use positive words. If you need to practice ahead of time and write a list of positive words, do it. They don't want to hear you complain. They want to know what the solution is. And that's what you want too. So don't divert them with negative words. Highlight the agreements. Maybe you're coming in with a piece of legislation that has 4 issues. And on the first one, they've already nodded their head and said, yeah, I think I agree with you on that. So you want to highlight those agreements, particularly if there's a lag in the conversation or near the end. Of the 4 issues in this bill, you've already told me you support the first one. How do you feel about the other ones? And if it's like, no way in hell that I'm supporting the third one, say, well, what do you suggest instead? Or how can we counter your opposition? What's acceptable? And of course, if you can bring a constituent with you, there's nothing better than someone sitting in a chair who votes for that person. You just can't beat it. So you may want to follow up if your activity organization like the league, that the constituents reinforce your visit, you bring some with them. And you know what's important is that those constituents thank them after they vote too. Or I never use the word, I'm angry that you didn't vote. I'm disappointed that you weren't able to adopt this. It's so important to your constituents. Next, the last one. Ask, I think we're talking, one more slide, maybe it isn't there. There we are, ask for support. You know, you are a salesperson. So near the end of this meeting, and maybe you can even do it beforehand, but certainly before you leave, you need to emphasize those areas of agreement. And sometimes you can reference something they've done in the past, like maybe this is the next step beyond something they've already supported. And I think you want to soft pedal the ask. Don't say no. So are you going to support this? Boy, that'll turn everybody off, because just that attitude is not acceptable. Obtain support commitment. Say, am I ever to go back to my membership and tell them that this bill is to your liking? So find those little softer words that accomplish the same thing. Never leave without thanking them for their time, and thank them for their input. Even if they haven't given you any, thank them for their input, because it needs to be a two-way street. And if they have input, reply a little bit. Thank you for input on the need for disability representation on the board. That kind of two-way street that we are compromising and working together is very, very important. And please follow it up, not with an email, but with a handwritten thank you note. Because in this day and age, something that's handwritten is worth its weight in gold, because people just don't do it. And when you do it, and the next time they see you, say, you're the woman who wrote us a handwritten note. Like, I got above all the paper that was on the desk. When you're dealing with the Florida legislature, because I simply, having lobbied in 10 states, I can't believe that they meet for 60 days on a state this size with this complicated of budgeting programs. They have no time. So your meeting, maybe 10, maybe if you're lucky, 15 minutes. If you can meet them at home, that's where the constituent impact really helps you out. But when you're up in Tallahassee, it is a mad rush, a mad rush. I think there's more acceptance now of Zoom for this upcoming session, because they're all using it and they're not afraid of it anymore. So I think maybe this is an opportunity of a new way to communicate without having to go up to Tallahassee. And you know, you need that last minute when there's an amendment on the floor. If in the long run, when you're dealing with a person who votes, one of the most powerful things you can learn is asking a question like this. If you had an amendment that was presented to you and you are walking down the hall to vote on this amendment, what 3 people would you call for their advice? they're probably going to be their constituents or staff person. And you know what? You need to learn who those people are so you can meet with them and form that coalition with them. Because if they depend on a particular local politician on the county level, or if they prefer a neighbor who's an attorney and he kind of gives them free legal service and stuff, you need to know who those advisors are. So I hope if you're able to, I know it's short notice, next Wednesday, do something where we take this outline and we actually create handout materials. We actually analyze and learn how to recognize the neurolinguistic patterning. We would love to have you as guests, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And just to go back to your last comment about the League of Women Voters event, is this available on the local league's website?
No, yes, we're doing a Zoom.
Okay.
So I'm going to put the contact, and she will then. You have to register for it, so we don't get bombed.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. And so I'll give you
Awesome.
the person to contact, their email, and they will automatically add you.
Thank you. Karen, thank you so much for some great information. A great takeaway, talking about effective communication, that special touch, very memorable. I think a lot of people are just used to the quick email and it's kind of like a checklist, like, okay, we've followed up or whatever. But I think that's a very effective way to
Robin,
kind of leave
I
that.
have been known to bring cookies and donuts to the staff.
Really? We know they love you and they are going to be willing to listen to you. That is a great tip. I may have to try that when we're allowed to resume in-person meetings.
You know,
So.
they don't talk while they're eating, so that gives you an opportunity to say something.
Oh my gosh. But the good thing that you also brought out in talking about this is that communication is important no matter where you're, who you're talking to, what you're dealing with. If it's advocacy, if it's talking to your mother, those are just great skills to just perfect and continue to hone through time. And they can carry you from the boardroom to the classroom or wherever you may go. But these are just some very foundational tips that I think that you've shared with us today. So thank you again, Karen. And for anyone who is looking to sign up for the League of Women Voters event, be sure to do so soon. We did get a question, and this is to Judith or to Karen. Will these slides be available for reference?
We can do that.
Okay.
Yep, we'll
All
send
right.
it out as follow-up along with the recording. Not a problem.
Thank you. All right, ladies, I want to introduce to you our last and final panelist. I swear we continue to have these Zoom dates together on a weekly basis. She's there, I'm there. It's a meeting or something that's going on. Next is Takeda King Payne. Takeda is the executive director at the Women's Foundation of Florida. She specializes in advocacy, government relations, and communications. She began her career as a candidate and issue campaigns around the country. She spent 3 years at Planned Parenthood of Southeast and North Florida, working on public and community affairs. Takeda has also served as the chief of staff to Florida State Senator Kevin Rader for 3 years. And more recently, she's worked in corporate communications and giving at the TBC Corporation. Takeda holds a master's in political management with an emphasis on candidate campaigns from the George Washington University. She also completed her Bachelor of Art degrees in political science, communication studies, and theater arts. And right now, like I said, she is the executive director with one of our organizations that is putting on this event, the Women's Foundation of Florida. And she says that she has a goal to help girls and women to become the leaders so that they can take over and change the world. So Takeda King Payne, you are up, my dear.
Thank you so much, Robin, for that glowing introduction. I appreciate it. I see so many folks that I recognize, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us over your lunch today. I'm really excited to dig in. Obviously, advocacy is has a piece of my heart, and anything about advocating and working to improve the world through advocacy is something that I just have dedicated most of my career to. So I was very excited to speak about this. I wanted to start off just kind of talking about because my first question is advocacy and ambassadorship, and the idea of what is the difference between the two. And so I looked it up on BoardSource because they're an amazing resource. And the biggest difference is either advocacy or ambassadorship as a board member for an organization, your job is to talk to the community, talk to people in positions of power and leadership about the organization, the mission, and the programs that you're doing. So the biggest difference between the two is in advocacy, your focus is more on legislation and issues, whereas ambassadorship is talking about your overall organization. So me going and speaking with a county commissioner about the importance of focusing on women and girls in the work that they're doing in their budgets, that's advocacy. But me going to my next door neighbor and talking about the Women's Foundation and the amazing programs and the work that we do in the computer to fill the gap of need for women and girls, that's ambassadorship. So I just wanted to make that clear because they are very similar. And there's ambassadorship that's part of advocacy. So there's a lot of crossover, but I just like to have definitions. I'm very methodical that way. But when you're talking about nonprofit advocacy, it's not about, everybody thinks lobbying is advocacy. And yes, lobbying is a huge part of advocacy. It's a very important piece, but it's not everything entailed within what an advocate can do for an organization or an issue. Nonprofit advocacy, I love this definition, is about helping those who set public policy to ensure they understand how the choices they're contemplating and the decisions they make will positively or negatively affect the people that we serve. So nonprofit advocacy is really about standing on our mission and holding our leaders, whether they're elected, appointed, or at any level, accountable to helping us accomplish our goals. So one of the cool things about serving on a nonprofit board is that you're not all politicos. You haven't been doing this your whole lives. And so advocacy can seem a little scary at first, but the reality is, come from when you're serving on a board, it's a unique, diverse group of people. You all have different backgrounds, experiences, careers. And so going in and speaking about your mission from all of those different perspectives really makes a difference and will help improve the impact that you're having when you're advocating for your organization. And something I found really disturbing is, while we recognize the importance and the necessity of advocacy, especially within a nonprofit board, only about 52% of nonprofit organizations are currently utilizing board members to advocate or doing any advocacy at all. So just a little over half of nonprofits around the nation are actively utilizing advocacy to accomplish their missions. And that's a little disturbing, because talking about your issues, talking about your mission with your local elected leaders, with your state and federal elected leaders, that is super important, but also talking to your community, what other organizations or departments. So as the Women's Foundation, we do work around helping girls. And so talking with people at the Department of Education who are not necessarily elected, they're appointed members, but those are important pieces of the advocacy as well. And so remember, when you're talking about lobbying, it may be specific to legislators, but advocacy is talking to all people and educating on not only your mission, but the issues that your mission is working. And so, yes, lobbying is broader than, or advocacy is broader than just lobbying. It incorporates more pieces like communications, and as well as nonpartisan voter education and some other pieces that I'm going to get into. So first off, number one myth that's out there, there's this idea, well, I'm a nonprofit, I can't lobby, or we're nonpartisan, we don't do anything political. Well, politics and nonpartisan are not the same thing. And so as a nonprofit organization, you absolutely should be advocating, lobbying, and doing all of the above within the rules of the IRS and that are set. And so when you're serving on a board, that will be the staff that you work with at the organization will help you with those pieces and making sure that all of the laws and rules are being followed. I've been that person for boards, so know that that is usually something that all boards are very cognizant of when this happens. But I do encourage everyone who's on this call and interested in becoming a nonprofit board member to understand and push for advocacy at the organizations that you're a part of. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that can look like. And so first is the lobbying, as Karen did a great overview of ways to have really effective lobbying meetings. And I will say, as a former staffer in the state legislature, you hit it dead on. Food, treats, bribing the staff is, or not, giving staff acknowledgement is something I think is so important. The staff gets to decide who sees the elected officials, how long you get, and if your information makes it into their folder when your bills come up on the floor. And so I think, Karen, you hit a lot of those pieces really well. As you were talking, I was just nodding my head. Yep, that's important. And if you're in Tallahassee and you want to buy donuts for staff, I will tell you, Kingdom Donuts. Kingdom Donuts is the place to get them. Super secret that I'm letting out of the bag here, but if you really want to win people over, it's amazing. So there are two types of lobbying, and the lobbying that Karen talked about is what we call direct lobbying. And so that is when you contact a legislator directly to specifically talk about an issue and specifically talk about legislation or policy. And then there's the grassroots lobbying, and this is a little bit more indirect. So grassroots lobbying is an organization that sends out an email that says, this bill is coming up next week, and we need to call the committee and tell them not to pass this bill. And so you're asking the public to reach out and lobby their local elected officials, whether that's with a phone call, an email, or a petition, or even asking them to schedule meetings. The grassroots lobbying is more indirect, but is effective, as Karen mentioned, to bring in that constituent piece. And I tell everyone, this is the dirty little secret of local or of state politics, is that if you live in the district, your voice, how you feel about the issues, matters a whole lot more to a member when you're meeting with them versus someone that doesn't currently represent you. You're basically you're their constituent, you're their customer. They are responsible to you for what they're voting on and how they're voting. That doesn't mean they're always going to vote the way you want them to, but they do owe you an explanation when they don't vote the way you want them to. And so keep that in mind. They work for you. They're your elected officials. They are your public servants. And so in lobbying, that the grassroots route is often very effective because you're getting large amounts of people to contact members that currently represent them. And so moving on to the next piece of advocacy that isn't lobbying, is the nonpartisan voter outreach and education during election time. This is not political campaigning. Political campaigning is not allowed. You cannot, as a nonprofit organization, endorse specific candidates or tell people vote for this person, don't vote for that person. But you can tell them, this is an issue that matters to us. Pay attention to how these elected officials voted on these issues. You can't call out specific. And so within election time, I know Natasha had mentioned her work on the Biden campaign, and I have a background in campaigns as well, and it's super exciting. But on the advocacy side, it's much less focused on an individual and more focused on the issue or the legislation that you're working for. And so with the Women's Foundation during the elections, we don't do any type of partisan campaign work. It's against the rules. And so no nonpartisan 501c3 organization should do it. But there are nonpartisan ways that you can be involved in the elections. A great opportunity came about in 2020 for our organization. We joined a coalition of about 40 organizations across the county called the When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad. And this was all similar organizations, all nonprofits, dedicated to educating voters on the issues, as well as registering voters to vote, or registering folks to vote. And then we also did a really cool series of candidate forums. And so this is a piece that is totally allowed. It's considered advocacy as candidate forums, providing a platform for candidates to talk about the issues, ask them questions about the specific issues and policy that matters to your organization, and really allowing questions to be asked without specifically saying, oh, this one or that one is better, vote for this person. It's very much just, here are your candidates, here's where they stand on our issues, and they get to share with your folks. And so we have actually 3 of those coming up for the municipal elections. So if you are interested, I'll shoot that out in the follow-up email. We have some municipal campaign or candidate forums for West Palm, Delray, the Glades community, Riviera Beach, and Boca. And another way that you can get involved, so that's an example of the allowed election campaign activities. You can also do town hall meetings around issues. You can do one-pagers on the issues, and here's what's happening in your state government or your local government on these issues. So as long as you're keeping it issue specific, that is totally within the realm of legality and encouraged for advocacy. Some other ways, advocacy looks really different in a lot of different organizations. And so I wanted to give some examples of other ways that you can do advocacy. One is sharing your personal stories or sharing out personal stories of your membership or people that you serve from your organization, doing community education around the issue, conducting and sharing out research and surveys. We just actually released a report called Research to Action, Making Girls a Priority. And the actual research report has a lot of really valuable information. And we were able to work with some community partners around the state to create that report and release it. And now we're sharing it with our local and our state elected officials, saying, look at this. Like, here's concrete proof that there are issues with how girls are struggling. The report was very, very clear about that. And so we're able to take that information to elected officials and community leaders and show them, not only have we identified that there are issues, but the report also includes really cool recommendations, whether they be policy or community activities that can be done to help alleviate those issues. So right there, we've done the research, we've created the report, and now we're helping to advocate and be ambassadors to other organizations and get them to buy into the need for this work so that we all are amplifying our impact on the issue. Another way that you can do advocacy is talking specifically about how an issue impacts your organization and your mission, whether that's a line item in the budget and how cutting funding is going to hurt the services that you're providing to students, or just in general, issues that are bad for people. A great example, there's a bill that will affect sex education here in the state of Florida. It would actually require all parents to opt their children into sex education or they won't receive it. Now, it's also packaged with pornography, like it's absolutely ridiculous. But this particular bill is bad for girls, bad for all students. But as the Women's Foundation, we recognize that girls need comprehensive, medically accurate, and age-appropriate sexual health education. And so that bill is one that we're going to go to legislators and say, this is a bad bill. We want you to work against it because it hurts girls who aren't given the information on how to protect themselves from unwanted pregnancies and STDs are going to lead to either unwanted pregnancies that they have to deal with, young teen mothers, STIs, health issues they're going to face for the rest of their lives. So sharing that information and the impact that it had. And then the last area that I wanted to talk about is more ways that you can advocate on behalf of your organization, but they also tie in directly to working with the media. People see the media and don't automatically think, hey, that's a way to advocate or that's advocacy, but it is. If you are working with a reporter on a news story that shows up on WPTV or your local news station, that is going to expand the number of people who are learning about your organization, they're learning about your mission and any issues that you may be advocating for. And a great example, as I mentioned, we released the girls report and we were able to get some media locally around that. After that, maybe 3-minute media piece aired, I got a number of emails from organizations that wanted to learn more, wanted access to the report, as well as individuals saying, I love what you're doing in the community. How can I get involved in your foundation? And so that is a really great way to reach a lot more people. And it's not as hard as you'd imagine. Working again with whatever organizations you're a board member with, you'll have staff and folks that will work with you to garner these media opportunities, as well as you to do them. The whole process for an interview can take a couple hours and it'll result in maybe 3-minute clips. So know that you're not going to have to do an hour, 2-hour long interview one-on-one with a reporter. Not that. But also other ways that you can work with the media is the use of things like letters to the editor or op-eds or even targeted ads. In work that I've done with Planned Parenthood in New Jersey, we actually put out ads during the elections about, remember, reproductive rights are important. Make sure that you're checking, these are the bills that passed and look at who voted for them. Pay attention. but also letters to the editor and opinion editorials. As a board member, when you're submitting those, you're going to have an easier chance of getting published, number one, because you're not staff for the organization. But number two, you're also representing the organization and yourself. And so say you're a community leader, people are going to say, oh, there's that person. That's the president of my HOA. I didn't know they were involved with that organization. And so letters to the editor and opinion editorials are going to show up in your print and online news, and it's going to expand the influence of what you're trying to say. It's going to also elevate your organization by getting them free media, because there's a lot of people who are looking at the local newspapers, or at least reading them online these days. And so working with the media, finding ways to put out more information and work with them to talk about your mission is always interesting, but there's opportunities that are always out there. I actually have a couple calls this week with folks that are looking to do articles. So not only developing relationships in the way that Karen mentioned with your elected officials, but trying to do so with some local media contacts, whether they are newspaper reporters or television reporters. But once you have those relationships, when the issues come up about women and girls, it's like, call the Women's Foundation. They were on a report for us earlier. And so those type of relationships can really help you advocate as well and then expand the. And that was all that I wanted to cover. Is there anything I'm missing, Judith?
I think that was great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Takeda. You hit on a lot of great points. One thing you talked about was the When We All Vote partnership. And so that's an example of a coalition where you have similar groups who are, in this case, nonpartisan, who have, in this case, a shared goal to educate our voters about issues, to remind them there's an election. There are roughly 30 to 35 organizations from smaller nonprofits to larger nonprofits, but they're all based here in Palm Beach County. So that's a great example of not only just utilizing, having your resources to bring it to the table, but it's a great opportunity for coalition building because everyone gets the chance to have the impact of everyone working together. I have weaknesses. Takeda's great when it comes to campaigns. She knows who to talk, this, and that, but I might be great at, I don't know, drafting this script for this upcoming candidates forum so we can work together as a team or with other people that are a part of this coalition to put together these forums. So we see this in all types of examples here in Palm Beach County and throughout the entire state and country. So those are also great points. I like the fact that you brought to my attention, and I didn't realize it, but a lot of nonprofits don't necessarily advocate for themselves. And that's a great point. So for anyone who is currently serving on a board, I think she gave you some great things or suggestions just to take into consideration using the media to your advantage. Again, building and fostering those relationships. Again, being a voice and not only just thinking about advocacy, but just being a simple ambassador that could equate to additional donor dollars. It could mean maybe additional resources that come your way in kind donations. So it definitely can amplify your impact and whatever your mission and work is. So with that, I hope that you ladies that are joining us today have been able to kind of get a better understanding of ambassadorship, advocacy, having a slightly clearer, different understanding of lobbying. It's definitely, it's something that takes time to kind of build and grow. It doesn't just come overnight, but it's going to take for you to kind of refine your approach, defining those issues, tailoring your messaging, and you just have to keep going at it over and over and over. So perhaps you start local or maybe start with a friend to kind of practice a pitch or something like that. But I think that we have learned some great tips today just to kind of at least help you to get your foot in the door or to give you some new ideas to kind of maybe rethink advocacy and ambassadorship as you seek roles on local nonprofits and also in our government boards. Let's see, we have a lot of thank yous, very informative. Does anyone have any questions for any of our speakers? We have just a little bit more time, but I do want to allow you to ask a question. You can ask it in the chat. We're just getting a lot of great thanks. So ladies, I want to thank you, Karen, Takeda, and also Nakasha. I'm looking right at your picture. Thank you, ladies, for taking your time just to talk about advocacy from your perspectives and experience. In the event anyone has questions, I'm going to ask Judith just to give us and just a little update on the upcoming sessions, because we're not quite done yet. We have a few more months to push through in 2021.
Absolutely. And thanks again to our amazing speakers and our great host and facilitator, Robin, of course. Give all of them a round of applause. It was fantastic. I always learn something new from these workshops, and I love participating in them and being part of this joint effort to empower more women to lead and to serve on boards. So yes, as Robin was saying, this coalition effort organized by 20 or so different organizations is a 9-month free Women on Board Leadership Academy program. Next month on March 17th, and you'll get some email information about this, on March 17th is our next program. It is also a lunchtime program. We kind of go back and forth between lunchtime programs and evening programs. So next month is again a lunchtime program, and it's focused on the culture of philanthropy. So we know lots of folks want to serve on boards and they think, oh my gosh, but I have to ask people for money, forget it. And what we're really hoping to do with this workshop is, one, help you really more broadly think about how your role on a board as an ambassador is to create a culture of philanthropy. Part of that, yes, on some boards, not all boards, but some boards means going out and asking colleagues to invest in something that they're already telling you they care about. But what's really great about a culture of philanthropy is that it is well beyond that moment when you say, Chiquita, since you care so much about empowering girls and ensuring they all get access to medically accurate information, will you donate $1,000 to the Women's Foundation? Yes, that is part of it. But it is so much more. It's the conversations. It's the whole movement around really discussing with community contexts why they care so much about a particular issue and how that agency is helping to solve that problem or invest in it in some way. So come join the March 17th workshop and get over your fear of the idea of fundraising and learn a lot about how you can be a board ambassador by creating that culture of philanthropy. Again, look out in your emails, you'll get information about it and all the info to register. The programs go through June, so lots more coming. And again, just so thankful to our speakers today who provided such a wealth of information about advocacy and serving as an ambassador, and just so thrilled to be here.
Thanks, Judith. Again, thank you to everyone for the kind words and comments. And we shall see you all again next month. Have a great rest of your day, ladies.